Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm so sorry I was gone so long again without any warning. I had a major respiratory problem that just took a really long time to get over. Actually, I'm still kind of getting over it, but I totally lost my voice. I had such a severe, constant cough. I've never had anything like it. I had to, and I mean this literally, constantly suck on these cough drops that would kind of numb my throat and a little below that, because if I didn't, I would just cough so incessantly. I had a hard time talking for when I lost my voice, but even when that improved, like talking triggered the coughing. So anyway, I hope you never have that. You would not have wanted to hear me through that. It would have been a very unpleasant episodes to listen to, but I'm mostly recovered now. I'm coughing some. I'm probably going to have to do some significant editing to edit all that out, but I do feel well enough to at least be back. It kind of worked out because I had a pretty big incident happen in my family a couple months ago, and it gave me some time to reflect on things and what I'm going to do about it. I will share about that next week. And I'll tell you, having a mother who is a covert narcissist, it's a lot to deal with. You know, it's ongoing. My mom has been out of my life for over 3.5 years now, or almost 3.5 years, and she still finds ways to inflict pain on me, and that's the reality of it. And it can be very triggering. It can bring up a lot of trauma when it happens, and take some time to bring that back down. So I hope you'll come back next week. I'll share what happened, and frankly, I'd love your input for some of you that have, are further down this road than me or have some insight. But for today, just because I have this cough, I kind of wanted to have a little bit shorter of an episode than that. And so I've had a lot of you ask in the comments, how did I find my therapist? How do I find a therapist that, or, asking me, how do I find a therapist that is knowledgeable on this subject? And it's an important question to ask and have answered. So this episode is really going to be about therapy. I went to therapy for several months. I still have, I don't go to therapy regularly anymore, but I do still have an ongoing relationship with my therapist. If I need to reach out to her, I can, and schedule, a session or two if I need to work through something. I do urge you to see a therapist if you can. I realize it's not within reach for everyone, but if you can, it can be so helpful. But it is extremely important that whatever therapist you see is knowledgeable and experienced in narcissistic parental abuse. And why is that important? It can actually not only not be helpful to you to see a therapist who doesn't know about this stuff, it can be quite harmful to you to see a therapist who's not familiar with this disorder and the way it impacts victims of this type of abuse. It can actually hurt you and lead you to be abused even more. And let me give an example of that. If your mother is a narcissist, covert or overt, wouldn't matter, a narcissist, they don't ever respect boundaries. Ever. So you may go to your therapist and say, well, I have all these problems with my relationship with my mother. She never respects my boundaries. She has no consideration for my feelings. I don't know what to do. Well, someone who's not well versed in this disorder, they would very likely say, well, you just have to become better at setting boundaries. And then they would help you develop skills to better communicate your boundaries. Now, those are skills most of us who have narcissistic mothers could indeed use. But, that's just for life in general, for in our friendships in general, because we didn't have the chance to build those skills, because our mothers don't respect our boundaries, so we've never been able to learn, what works, what doesn't work, because nothing works with them. But building those skills would not help our relationship with the narcissist in our lives. If you set a boundary with your narcissistic mother, or really any narcissist for that matter, like say you ask your mother not to do something around you, she will do that even more because she takes that boundary as an attack. Narcissists can never see themselves as truly in the wrong. They'll never feel that. And so if you set a boundary, you say, could you not do such and such around me? That narcissist will take it as you're saying I'm doing something wrong, and that's unacceptable in their world. So they will start to do that to you even more, like as an attack to get back at you, to prove to you that they're in the right, in their just sort of warped perception of the world. That's how they see that. Or if you ask her, to do something specific, like a certain thing in certain circumstances, she's going to twist that all around and ultimately turn it against you. And the bottom line is if you do that, you will end up being abused even more. I've mentioned in the past that I have a disorder called misophonia. I really have a problem with people who make loud sounds while they're eating, people who chew with their mouths open, or even like nasal sounds, people like sniffing a lot. It really causes a very extreme reaction in myself that I can't seem to get in control. Reading about the disorder, it sounds like it's not something a person can control, which, kind of sucks. It's just something I have to live with. But my mom, I swear, is just one of the loudest eaters in the world. She always chews with her mouth open. She makes all these just slurping, slobbery type sounds, which, frankly, people who don't have this disorder have complained about what it's like to eat with my mother because she eats so loud. But all the more for me, who has a genuine mental health issue where those sounds, for, whatever reason, maybe it is because of her and growing up with that, just really ignite extreme discomfort in me that I can't help. And so I have repeatedly asked my mother over the years, will you please chew with your mouth closed around me? The sounds of you chewing with your mouth open, they really bother me. This was before I knew about misophonia. And then when I did learn about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is an actual thing. There's other people who have a serious problem with these sounds. I felt so validated, like I'm not just some weirdo. This is actually a problem people can have. And unfortunately, it's not treatable. And I even showed her that. I have this disorder. I'm sure I do. This is how it makes me feel. I found this website where it puts it all into words. It didn't matter. She just, I think she eats even louder. The more I would talk about it, she just eats louder and louder. And it's not even just how loud. It's like once I brought that up enough times, she started to make sure she was eating every time we were talking. Like if I called her on the phone, within 3 to 4 minutes of her answering the phone and seeing that it was me, she'd be eating something. Right into the phone, just eating real loudly in the phone. And if I came over to her house very shortly after her arrival, here she is. Let me run into the kitchen and get a bowl of food. It was like she was to make sure that she was eating around me every time I was talking to her. Another thing is once I was sitting on the couch and she sat down next to me. I've shared this before. She was just sitting way too close to me. It was like very much in my personal space, and it's not like there was a whole bunch of people on the couch. That's the only spot she could have to sit. The whole couch was empty, and so I asked her if she would move down a little bit. She was like pushing up against my body and everything, and it was very uncomfortable. And for one, at that point, I was a teenager at the time. I did not like my mother touching me. I still don't. I do not like my mother to touch me, and it's very upsetting to me. And so she got really angry at me that day that I asked her to do that. And from then on, and this has gone on, I was a teenager and I'm in my 40s now. That many years, if I'm sitting on a couch and she comes to sit next to me, even if the entire couch is empty, she will literally be practically sitting on me. Like she will just push right up against my body, where when she's coming down, she comes down on top of my leg. and just sits there while I am being completely squished on the end of the couch. And she's just sitting there, like, usually eating or something like that, just going on like this was completely normal while she's smashing me on the couch. Every time she sat by me, she would do that. So that's my point. And, if you're listening to this and you don't have a mother like this, you might be thinking, well, why are you calling that abuse? Like, yeah, it's really rude, it's crappy, but I wouldn't call that abuse. But when you are treated that way so consistently, every single day for years and years and decades, when you are treated with just such an extreme disregard for your own feelings so constantly, so consistently your entire life, there's never a break from it. It's always that way by your mother of all people. The cumulative effect of those things, like, yeah, each individual thing may seem somewhat small on its own, but the cumulative effect of all those things, it's extremely damaging to a person's mental and emotional well-being. It's extremely damaging. And because of that, because of how damaging it is to have that just so consistently for so long, yes, it is abuse. It's abusive to treat someone this way so constantly. And so, if your mother is a narcissist, you need a therapist who understands narcissism and who understands narcissistic parental abuse, because you need to make sure you're getting advice that applies to your specific situation, like the boundaries thing. And that's just one example. Yeah, if you're in a relationship with a normal, healthy person and you're having problems establishing boundaries well, that is good advice to help you become better at establishing boundaries. But not when you're in a relationship with a narcissist. Like, becoming better at boundary setting will make you abused even more. And there's many areas in this that if the person doesn't know about this specific disorder, they're going to set you up to be abused even more and damaged even more. You have to see a therapist knowledgeable about this subject. The problem is, of course, finding somebody who is knowledgeable about narcissistic parental abuse. It's not a common area for a therapist to go into. And so, the problem is maybe you say, I can't afford a therapist, and that very well may be true. And it's frustrating because there are income-based clinics where you pay based on what you can pay, or if you're on Medicaid or something like that, it would be covered. But it's unfortunately very unlikely that you're going to find someone there just because there's not very many people knowledgeable about this. The odds of one of those people being in a clinic like that are low. And it's sad because a lot of us do struggle financially because of the damage that we've endured. It's I'm not saying if your mother's a narcissist, you're just doomed to be in poverty. But many people are. They have, mental health issues or physical health issues from all these stresses and all these traumas that have affected their ability to make good money. And it's just a sad reality that the very damage you have suffered in some cases have also affected your ability to make the kind of money you need to be able to pay cash for a therapist. So if you are where you absolutely could not afford it, I empathize with you. I have been in that situation myself. I get it. But if you can, there are pretty affordable ways to go about it. So here's how I found mine, and this is the only recommendation I know to give, just because that's what worked for me. But there's an online platform called BetterHelp. And what that is a network of therapists on, who are specialized in all kinds of things. And it worked for me because when you go into BetterHelp, and just so you know, I have no connection to BetterHelp whatsoever outside of having used the service to find a therapist. I'm not making any money from talking about them. I would never accept something like that. This is what worked for me. there's this huge network of therapists. And then I typed in what my specific problem was. There's like check boxes where you can, if you need marital counseling, do you have depression, or do you have PTSD, are you recovering from abuse, or whatever. So I clicked the relevant boxes, and then there was a box where you could just type in open-ended what your specific problem is. And then the platform matches you to therapists who have indicated that that's what they're trained for. And I got really lucky. The very first therapist I was matched to, she did know about that. She actually counsels people who have suffered from multiple forms of abuse, and she was very familiar with this type of abuse. Even while helping me, she educated herself about it even more, because she sent me some resources that she found. Resources that I found she wanted to know. She was willing to expand her knowledge even more to make sure that she knew how to help me thoroughly. She was just a great match for me. And so I will say, even if I feel like when I came to her, she did know about narcissistic parental abuse, but not as well as she did by the time we were, mostly through that process. But she was very well trained and knowledgeable in abuse in general. And so that was a good starting point. She had that foundation that she needed to then add to her knowledge to be able to help me. So I would say also, if they're a therapist that specializes specifically in abuse in general, that foundation will be a great starting point for them. But whatever you do, you make sure in that first session you interview the therapist, not just the therapist interviewing you, so you can make sure, one, that you feel comfortable with this person, and two, obviously, as I've already explained, make sure that they have the experience necessary in helping people who are victims of abuse, of parental abuse, and that they have at least some knowledge and openness to narcissistic parental abuse and understanding how that affects people, because it affects us in a very unique and specific way, and they need to know what they're talking about. So I was really lucky. I don't know if you go to BetterHelp if you'll be that lucky and the very first person is just the perfect match for you. But I do feel like through that service, because of having this big network and you identifying what the problem is and then being matched, even if you had to go through 2 or 3 different ones, I think you would find someone. So let's talk about what you do in therapy. Because a lot of people think, oh, it's just an expensive ear. I can vent to a friend. I'm not going to pay that much money just to vent to somebody. Because a lot of people picture therapy as, just this stereotype of you're laying on the couch and there's the therapist in a chair writing and taking notes as you share and vent. That's not really what therapy is like. Maybe it was decades ago, but it's not now. I mean, some of therapy can be venting. There were definitely a few times that I just started talking about something and got really worked up and I went on a tangent, and my therapist had to kind of hone me back in to make sure the conversation was staying productive. Because therapy, it doesn't just focus on talking about the problem like to get it off your chest. That's not what therapy is. That can be a step just to, speaking about something, finding words for it can help you process it. But that's just like one component. That can be a really good component because you're talking to somebody who is professionally trained to listen well. And I will say, for someone like me, people like us who have been through what we've been through, to feel truly heard, that can be really impacting for people like us, because so much of our lives we've not been heard. But therapy goes really far beyond that. You dig into what you share at a deeper level. And in time, you just better understand what's really going on with you. And you may think you know. I definitely thought I knew what was going on with me, what I felt, what I was dealing with. I thought I was coming in with a pretty in-depth knowledge of myself. And then I was quite surprised to learn that's not true. So you might be surprised. I would say the biggest thing I gained from therapy, there was many things I gained. But the biggest one was I really had no idea until I went through the therapeutic process how fear-driven I am in my interactions with other people. Incredibly, extremely fear-driven. I knew I had problems in certain settings. I would say, oh, I freeze up, I get awkward. I would kind of use terms like that. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And my therapist helped me see I was actually paralyzed by fear. And so many of my behaviors that were making it really difficult to establish stronger relationships in my life, those behaviors were driven by fear. And so I had to deal with the fear. I had a fear of being mistreated, rejected, unloved, treated like I'm not worthy or like I'm lesser, or even just not being liked. Or a big one was the feeling like I bothered someone. And that's because my mom so constantly treated me like I was just a bother to her, that I drove her crazy, that I was annoying. And so I'm, being treated that way so much by your mother. I was very, very fearful, and I still am. I'm still working through this. I get very fearful that I would bother somebody, and that was driving so much of my behaviors toward people and sabotaging what could have been wonderful relationships. I have a whole episode. I don't want to go deeper into the story now, because you can just go find the episode. But, my son and I traveled in a travel trailer for a couple years, and we were in Maine, and I met this guy named John, and we had a lot of similar interests. I'm really interested in education, like methods and approaches, things like that. And I homeschool my son. We take a very customized approach that is very child-led, and he's really thrived in that after public school really did not work well for him. And John, he has a PhD in education, and he was working in Southeast Asia. So he has a cabin in Maine he comes to every summer, but then during the school year he's in Asia, where child rearing is very different over there. Children have very little say in their lives, and so he's really got his work cut out for him. He basically teaches teachers that when children have more of a say in their lives, they have more choices, they do better in their education. And so we were just having these fascinating conversations on that. He's so educated in it. He's so experienced in it, like way, way higher than me. I was learning so much. It was so interesting. And as the summer progressed, I was withdrawing from him, even though I really liked talking to him. I didn't even really realize that's what I was doing. I guess I kind of knew. But this was just the normal track for anybody I met who I felt was better than me, I guess is the best way to put it. That, he was more educated than me. He had more experience than me. He, at least appeared to me to be a very healthy person. I met his wife. They seemed very happy together. He's just kind of a person who had it together. And people like that, I've kind of shied away from. I feel like there's no way they would want to be friends with me. And so as I enjoyed talking to him more and more, weirdly, I was spending less and less time with him. And so I was in therapy at the time, and somehow that came up as we were talking about my fears and relationships. And, she helped me see, like, that's so fearful. Like, really enjoying being with somebody and really wanting a relationship with them is so terrifying to me. Of like, well, what if then they don't want to? What if I'm just annoying him? What if I'm bothering him? And so, like, this wasn't the first time. I don't even know how many times I've done this, where I kind of ghost people. And then they feel like, oh, I guess she didn't really want a friendship with me. I thought things were going well, but now she's been putting me off. And, so they move on. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've done that. So my assignment was to push through those fears and to forge ahead in making this friendship with John and his wife. And I talk more about it in the episode, but God, that was so I mean, there were times I just felt like I was shaking. I was so scared. It was unbelievable to me when I really came to understand what I was actually feeling. Like, yeah, it was. It was paralyzing levels of fear that were driving so many of my my behaviors and my interactions with others. And if I had never gone to therapy, I don't think I would have ever come to fully understand that. So through therapy, you learn more about yourself and, most importantly, what to do about it. Me pushing through with John, and then if you go to that episode, I had this amazing eye-opening experience where it just showed me, like, wow, he really wanted to become friends with me, and here I came very close to hurting his feelings. If I wasn't in therapy, I would have really hurt his feelings with the way I would have continued acting towards him. And it was just a really profound experience. So now I know what to do about it, how to push through those fears, and just being so much more aware of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The fear is still there. It's improved actually quite a bit. I'm not as fearful as I was. I'm definitely better able to push through it now. It's not so paralyzing or terrifying, but it's definitely there. But because I'm so much more aware of it now, when I'm interacting with someone and I'm about to engage in one of those fear-driven behaviors, like after a lot of practice, I am now able to stop myself, think about what I'm feeling, identify what it is I'm afraid of, and then help myself see that it's irrational. It's an irrational fear, and it's harmful to my relationships. And then I can make a different choice on what to do. And yes, that different choice is usually terrifying, but the more I do them, and then nothing bad happens, and in fact, usually good things happen, the less terrifying they're becoming, and the more able I am to overcome those fears. I don't know that the fear will ever be completely gone, but I feel very optimistic and hopeful now that because of all the progress I've made in the last couple years working on this, that I am going to reach a point where it doesn't affect my life so much. It's so much more manageable now, so I think, okay, look at all the progress I've made in the past couple years. Wow, what if I make that much more progress again over the next 2 years from now? Where will I be? And I feel very hopeful that that's just not going to be so impacting on my life anymore. I work for someone, actually, who also has a narcissistic mother, and so we talk about it sometimes, and I shared some of this with her, and she was stunned to learn about all the issues I've had with communicating with others, because she was like, I've just always seen you as such an excellent communicator, which was really surprising to me because I'm not. And I said, that's because you didn't spend a lot of time with me before I got so much better. And if you had, I don't think you'd be saying this right now. So it just shows how far I've come. And therapy was a huge part of that. Even that said, though, I still struggle. I'm still practicing. I'm still working on this. I'm not really in regular therapy now. I think I mentioned that she's available if I need her here and there because I understand what to do now, and now I just need to do it. It took 4 decades to develop these problems. It's going to take time to undo them. If you're frustrated with yourself and you're trying to work on some kind of issue like that, be patient with yourself. This did not happen in a few years. It happened, likely in a few decades. And it doesn't mean it's going to take a few decades necessarily to get over, but it's unrealistic to think that, we can just work on something for a few months or even a year and then it will just be all better. But my point here is that therapy helps you better understand yourself. It helps you understand what problems you're really struggling with. And then, again, most importantly, what specific actions you can take to improve upon that, to improve upon yourself, your relationships, and your life. So if it's possible to see a therapist, I really urge you to do so. It can be hard to talk about this stuff. It is. It's, boy, when I first started therapy, that was a very emotionally chaotic time in my life because I was bringing up things from my past that I had not talked about in that kind of depth, and just kind of bringing it all to the forefront of my mind. It was about a 3 or 4 months where I was just feeling a lot of things very, very intensely. And maybe you've thought about that and it feels kind of scary to you. I think that's completely valid. But that's how we work through those things. It's how we become able to accept these things, to not, we're never going to have it where it doesn't upset us or cause us those kinds of emotions, but it can bring the intensity of them down and make them more manageable. If you can get through those initial months, it really, really helps. It just makes everything more manageable. So like I said, if you can see a therapist, I really, really urge you to do so. I wouldn't be having this podcast if I hadn't gone to therapy. That's how much it helped me. Now, if you just absolutely cannot, financially it's not possible, maybe you're in a different country where you don't have access to services like that, especially for a specialized therapist like this, there's many circumstances where it's not possible, at least right now. And so if that's the case, I don't feel like your situation is hopeless. I mean, therapy is what's best, but listening to podcasts like mine and, people who have been through it, listening to there's YouTube channels that have therapists that talk about it, reading books on the subject, journaling. I've shared some of my journaling on here. These are all things that can definitely help. And when you do listen to, if you listen to a podcast of mine or someone else, take the time to really digest it slowly. Really think about it deeply. I've seen some comments where people say, I just totally binged my way through your channel. Thank you so much. And I appreciate that, and I get it. And I'd probably do the same thing. In fact, I have when I found resources that work for me. But go back through. If you found them that helpful, go back through, listen to one at a time, and take a few days to really think deeply about what was said and process it as best as you can. Just digest it very slowly to make sure you're really getting down deep into yourself and getting to know yourself on a level you've never been able to before. I mean, that's part of having a narcissistic mother, is we were not really allowed to get to know ourselves. Our mothers were constantly defining us for us. So, we need to know ourselves even more than the average person does. And yet at the same time, we tend to know ourselves less than the average person does because of the type of abuse we've had to endure for so long. So really take the time, if really hard feelings come up, feel them. Don't think, I'm going to distract myself. You really have to feel those things to be able to process them. And it's hard. Oh my gosh, it's hard. But it's absolutely necessary. Now, I want to talk to some of you who are newer on this journey and assure you that it's okay to have an angry phase where I went through that, where you realize what's happened to you. When I figured out that my mom was a covert narcissist, and I was reading about it, and it was, several months after I'd gone no contact with my mom, at first, it was just very validating, like, oh my God, there are other mothers like mine. My whole life, I really thought I was the only person who had a mother like mine. It was she just didn't fit anything that I knew or understood. I didn't know what was wrong. And then to learn about it, in a way, was very good. But then I just started to get very angry. The permanency of this, and just really realizing who and what she was. I was pissed off for quite a while, and if you are, that's okay. It's okay to have a time where you just rant and you're just so angry. I mean, I see people come on here, especially when I had my episode about, can a narcissist change? That definitely incited a lot of anger in some people, and I get it. We want to believe that they can, because then we feel like our anger towards them is validated. And I will tell you this, regardless of whether your mother can just not have narcissism, absolutely is valid to be angry at her, to be angry about the situation. People were on there. It's not a mental health issue. She's evil. She's a demon. I see this in Facebook groups too, and that kind of talk. Because I think we feel like it has to be something like that, or it's wrong to be angry about it. And I don't agree with that. It's absolutely okay to be angry at your mother, even if it is a disorder that cannot be cured, that cannot be treated. It's completely okay to understand that and to also be angry at her. I think that's a natural stage to go through. You're realizing the absolute injustice of what has happened to you. How much you deserve an enormous apology that you will never, ever get. That this person has damaged you so immensely and caused you so much pain. And she doesn't care at all. And she never will. I mean, how can you not go through a phase where you're just extremely angry about that? And so if that's where you are, that's okay for a while. But if we want our lives to improve, if we want to be happy, if we want to live the lives we want and not be so consumed by this, we have to reach a point where we can work through all of this. We have to reach a point where we accept what happened, where we accept, the reality that we are going to continue to live in. And that can take months and even years of hard work. And what I want to make sure I'm clear. By acceptance, I don't mean that you have to be at peace with it. I don't think we need to be at peace with it. I don't know that it's really possible to fully reach a point of peace, because it's kind of like we're saying it's okay that it happened, and it's not okay. But just a point of acceptance of what happened, an acceptance of our reality of, okay, it sucks that it's this way, but it is this way, and I can't change it. I can't make my mom not be a narcissist. I just accept that. And then we move our sights onto what we should do now based on that reality. What life do I want? What do I wish I had that I can realistically have? So you first have to define that. What can I have and what can I not have? I cannot have a mother who loves me. I've never had that. I'll never have that. It's taken 3.5 years truly for me to be able to say that without tears and just terrible, overwhelming sadness just completely overtaking me. And it does still hurt. I'm sure it's always going to hurt. But it's a manageable level of pain now. I don't like that this is my reality. I wish it was not my reality, but I accept that it is my reality. That's just something I can't have. There's no other woman who can come along into my life and give me that, because no one can commit to me like a mother can, at least a healthy mother. I mean, I think of my commitment to my son. He had a stroke when he was a baby. He was born under some pretty extreme medical circumstances. I have completely changed my life in every way you can change a life to support his recovery from that stroke 10 years ago. I sacrificed my career that I'd worked really hard for. I went to school for almost 10 years, and I worked in the field I wanted for a few years. I got pregnant, had him, and that was the end of that career I'd worked so hard for. The hours that it takes to do that, it's just not possible for me to be a good mother to him with his specific issues and have that career. So I gave it up, and I ended up in a totally different career because I needed the flexible schedule that he needs me to have. I need to work from home. He needs that, so that's what I do. Who else would do that but a mother? No one would make that kind of a sacrifice for me except my mother if she was healthy, and she's not. So, I can't say, oh, I don't have a mother who loves me, and so I'm going to find some woman who loves me like that, because that's just not possible. It's just something I'll never have. I wish I could have it. I'm not okay that I can't have it. I'm not at peace with it. But I accept it's just something I'm never going to have. So that's not on my list of what I can pursue. I just accept, not going to happen. That's just not going to be part of my life. And as far as my family, I am very fortunate that I have a few family members who support me in this. But most of my family, because of the influence of my mother, they blame me for the problems between me and my mom. I've had to really distance myself from some people who were very important people in my life. And in fact, I mentioned I'm going to be doing this episode next week. Next week's episode is going to be about flying monkeys. If you don't know what that is, in the world of narcissism, that's talking about, you think of, the Wicked Witch. She had these flying monkeys out spying on people and, causing some chaos in people's lives and bringing back information. They're flying monkeys. I don't have contact with my mother, but I do have a person in my life who was passing along information about me to her, which I knew that, and I had told her, fine, but I just don't want to hear about it. Unfortunately, that has turned into my mother influencing her more and more, and led to a pretty significant incident with her. And she's been one of the most significant people in my life, and I'm having to completely redefine my relationship with her, which has been absolutely devastating for me. Like, I wish I could have a family who would hear me out fully and just give me the amount of support I deserve after what I've been through. I mean, I had to cut off contact with my own mom. That's such a big deal. And now I'm recovering from this extremely damaging form of abuse. Yes, I deserve support from people who love me through this, and yet she basically flat out stated to me that that's not something she's going to give to me. And there's many members of my family who won't give that to me. So I can't really have that either. It's wrong. I'm not at peace with it, but I accept it. I just don't get to have that. And I mean, yeah, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? Like, how depressing. And it was for a while. It's a lot to process. I did a lot of reading and self-reflecting. I listened to music a lot. I listened to music that really communicated my feelings. So when I say listen to music a lot, I don't mean, well, I feel sad, so let me put some happy music on so I feel happy. No, I actually played music that reflected what I was feeling, and it, music is a really big, it's a very big part of my life. I played cello when I was growing up. It was just what I really poured myself into during my teen years. I really mastered that instrument by the time I was 18, at least as much as you can by that age. And music is just really important to me, and I would play music that matched what I was feeling, and it made me feel those feelings even more, but I needed that. You have to feel these things to process them. I mean, you may notice I always have music on my episodes, and some people have complained about that, and that's okay. It may mean that my channel is just not the right fit for them. It's just it's a form of communication for me, and so it just seemed fitting to me. This has been such a big part of my journey to be playing a song that I feel really reflects my feelings on what we're talking about. Anyway, I mean, it's hard, okay? You don't have to realize the truth of these things and then just get up the next day and say, okay, I accept that. I'm 3.5 years into this, and it's really taken that long to reach this point of just, this is just how my life is. And I have to live in my reality. So you'll get there. If you're not there yet, you're going to get there. I've let myself grieve. I really worked through it. It's a pain that was really intense, extremely intense for a long time. And, if you've listened to my channel long, I've allowed those emotions to come through in my episodes, because I want you to know that first, what you're feeling is normal. It's okay. And secondly, it's okay to feel these things and to show those emotions. That's healthy. That's how you work through them and get through them. It just takes time. But that does not mean our lives have to be miserable and filled with pain and lonely and just, filled with longing for things we can't have for the rest of our lives. Because once I've accepted what I can't have, truly accepted that, now I can shift my focus onto what I can have and to make sure that I do have those things. I can have a tribe. I know that's not as great as having a close family. It's not. But it's still really, really great. And I don't want to miss out on that. I don't want to miss out on having a tribe because I'm so focused on trying to make my family be what I wish it could be when it's never going to be that. And then I miss out on something that also would have been really great. I mean, I've had to get rid of some friendships where it was clear that this person was not in my tribe. I mean, I did a series recently on healthy and unhealthy relationships, and I did that because we're very vulnerable to befriending people who don't treat us well. We're so used to being mistreated that can be all these red flags, and we just fly on by completely oblivious to them because we've been living with red flags everywhere, so you just sort of tune them out. But as I've gotten better, as I've become healthier, I've come to expect more of my friends. I'm building a tribe, and they're either really, truly part of that tribe or they're not. I have a few friends that we're really committed to each other. We support each other. We have each other's backs. We accept each other's imperfections as long as it doesn't result in repeated mistreatment that doesn't ever get better or improve. We work on ourselves. We see that effort from each other. We respect each other. We do what we can realistically for each other. That's a tribe. That's something I can have, and I love having it. So I'm continuing to work on myself to make sure that I'm being that for my friends too. I'm filling my life with people who are that for me and that I can be that for them. And I've made a lot of progress. My life is so much better than it used to be. I'm happier. I still have a long ways to go, but I've come so far. When I started this channel a couple years ago, I was in an intense amount of despair. I was in a stage of grief that was just so extreme, so intense. I had so many unhealthy relationships in my life. I did not really have a tribe. I did not have a support system that was healthy. I wasn't healthy in any way, really. I'm really proud of myself. I really worked on myself. I've grown in so many ways. I'm healthier. My relationships are healthier. And I'm really feeling like I have the beginnings of a tribe going. And, a few years ago, I don't think I could have believed that I could even reach the point I'm at now. I'm not recovered. I'm not healed. I'm still dealing with a lot, but in a few years I've come farther than I thought I would in my whole life. And I'm saying all that to say if that's how you're feeling right now. I mean, if you listen to that first episode on my channel, you can hear those emotions really coming through. In fact, I think that's what made this channel somewhat successful is people who are in that amount of pain and hearing someone else expressing that amount of pain. That just, I guess that, I don't know if camaraderie is the word I'm looking for, but just knowing that someone has felt those things too can really help. But if you're there right now, if you are just grieving, or you're so angry, or you're in despair, you feel like you don't even really have anybody to turn to, you're realizing what your mother is, and you're realizing what will never be. If you're just in that very intense stage, I get it. But it does get better. It's going to get better. Let yourself feel those things. And if you can, see a therapist to help you. It can change your life. And if you can't, spend time on these YouTube channels about it. Read books. Educate yourself. Feel the feelings. Like feel the feels, and it's going to get better. You let yourself feel what you need to feel. Don't be afraid to cry when you need to. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Be angry when you need to. But also look to a future that is better. And therapy is a tool to help you achieve that. So are books, so are podcast episodes, all that. Use the tools you have to achieve the future that you want. You're going to get there. I'm getting there. You're going to get there too. I hope this episode has helped you in some way, just given you a sense of hope and optimism and just a motivation to really seize that future that you want for yourself. You're going to be okay. I'll see you next week. And please remember, to all my fellow survivors out there, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are beautiful, whether your mom sees that or not.